So, hello, thank you everyone. Thank you for staying back with us. Yeah, so we have a very interesting discussion going on, right? I mean, we'll be touching base upon, I mean, the topic is about the UPI, but it is beyond the payments because typically UPI has been seen as the a medium for doing the digital payment perspective, but now the way it has been evolved or the way it has been perceived by the everyone, it is going beyond the payments. I mean, not just a traditional payment app, it has more value-added services as well. So that is something which we are going to focus upon. So we would like to start with the introduction first. So Satyajit, Lalit, followed by Vijayendra. Please introduce once.
Yeah, hi. This is Satyajit, co-founder of 86400, obviously an initiative of Mobile Way Technologies Private Limited. We've been a digital payments infrastructure company for about 15 years, working with the distinguished banks in India, now PPIs, payment aggregators and others, providing the UPI is one of them, but more or less we are doing entire NPCI stack. As a TSP, we started off with an IMPS way back in 2013, moved into UPI, then on to the rest of the products. I think the interesting story was that, from a beyond UPI payments, we'd invested in a platform called Transact, and I see my team here. We started off in 2016, and we called it an API banking platform, which was supposedly way early for the market. Went to banks, went to other, I don't want to name banks, but went to a lot of the partners and tried to see whether we could do this interesting play and have a differentiated offering to the market as a startup. Either it was not well understood or we were too small to get something going at that time. Cut to, by after the COVID hit and you had a 5-year hiatus, it became the largest kind of opportunity for us. The number of transactions go through the roof. We had a great opportunity to have a platform which is already ready. Pre-integrated APIs, hosted platform, which allowed for least amount of investment from the banks or the regulated entities. And our objective was to make sure that we are a monetization engine rather than a cost. So the idea was not to stay a cost center and exactly not be the only a switching partner, give them SDKs, APIs, other products which can actually help them monetize their stack or their rails. And that's continued now. We've got pretty much a lot of fintechs working with us, and the idea has been how to ensure their success, which actually generates our own revenues and success. So that's what we do, and we're looking forward to more and more use cases which are beyond, because innovation happens when there is a lot of opportunity for the startups, fintechs to make money. And UPI as a basic rail has been P2P free, maybe P2M somewhat above 2000. So we're looking at all those areas, and we've helped a lot. So we'll maybe talk about it later in this session. Thanks.
Sure, thanks. Lalit, moving on to you, would like to have introduction.
Yeah, hi. I'm Lalit here. I basically had UPI implementation delivery in MindGate. So as you must be knowing, MindGate Solutions basically processes roughly close to around 53% of the transactions in UPI ecosystem. We kind of process almost close to around, from a value perspective, almost close to around $2 trillion worth of UPI transactions annually. So we have been the kind of backbone which we have provided our stack, which enable UPI payments across for all the PSPs. Major PSPs like Google, WhatsApp, Paytm use our backbone from a PSP switch perspective, and major banks which are there which use our platform. So our key has been the resiliency of the system, the scalability that we have, and kind of the collaboration that we have been able to have on a tech side of it with different OEMs, which has enabled success on this journey. It has also helped us being pioneer with NPCI in terms of managing the whole backend for processing. So for all the banks on UPI, we kind of process all the transactions of UPI in the backend URCS system. So whether it is IMPS or UPI, MindGate provides the whole backbone for that. So that's a brief description for MindGate and for me. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Lalit. Vijayendra, just coming to you, please introduce and give some idea about what are you working on and how are you also looking at these opportunities.
Thanks, Vikram. So I represent CSB Bank. I run the retail, digital, as well as I also look after the government and institutional use cases. So UPI from financial rail, or I would say payment rail, I think it is moving in a direction where it will become, or probably has already become, a core financial infrastructure. I think it's no more a payment rail, it has become a core financial infrastructure where around that financial infrastructure, the whole innovation will happen on the payment side, credit side, collection side, distribution side. So the way we look at it is that is going to become a financial infrastructure rather than a payment rail. That's number one. For our bank, especially a bank, we are a small cap bank, although we are a universal bank, a bank which is almost 105 years old. And of course, the bank has gone into a new avatar for last 7 years. We have revamped our entire tech platform, modernized our core systems. In fact, we just gone through that transformation, and I think we're almost, that transformation is over. And UPI, clearly gives us an opportunity to scale not only our payment business, but also the credit line, because for us as a bank, MSME, micro enterprises, SME is a very, very important focus area for us, where there is a huge opportunity in terms of the credit led by UPI. And of course, in terms of customer acquisition also, it's a tremendous tool which we are looking at from the basis of UPI to partner with multiple fintechs as well as aggregator to acquire customer at speed from both on the deposit as well as on the credit side of it.
Sure. Yep. Thank you. So coming back to Satyajit, from your perspective, how does it evolve, and what are the UPI has become kind of embedded payment system altogether. So how it is helping and how it is getting evolved in your opinion?
So I think I'll kind of try and start with, when we started off in 2016, it was supposed to be pushed into all the banks. There was a lot of pressure to make sure that banks went live. Even today, let's say we have 700 banks and there's a long tail which is still to be done, which will continue at the parallel, and I think that is something which continues. The NPCI has been actually coming up, and it must be the most fastest changing market dynamics ever possible. I mean, if you look at a Visa, MasterCard, for about 20 years, they've been doing what they've been doing. But for this, within 10 years, to reach a 750 million number, we're not as large as MindGate, but still, we process, let's say, 150 crore transactions. It's in billions in terms of rupees, and the kind of outreach is unbelievable. So the products like credit line and UPI. So I think there's a lot of being said about the fact that there is no MDR, and there has been that, and I think that debate will continue, where we will have P2P free. There is a potential that we will have the merchant side transactions being charged for at least large merchants, etc. But with embedded finance, right, it now brings up a greater opportunity for all of us. You have a credit line UPI, credit card on UPI, the interchange seems to be in place. You have a 1.1% interchange for a credit line on UPI. Interestingly, in the Global FinTech Fest, we had the opportunity to work with one of the small finance banks, Suryodaya Small Finance Bank. We had Paytm as the distribution side of the partner, and the LMS side, so BRE LMS within the bank. The experience of the last 6 months is that there is unbelievably great potential. Credit is, there is so much requirement of credit in the market. The old style of banking where, you had only people going to the banks for loans, looking at the touch point as a branch or as a banking transaction, is dramatically changing. And the reason is obvious, that UPI has picked up so much from a P2P and a P2M perspective, or merchants are all already giving out, accepting payments on QR, and otherwise also on the, it's just a TPAP, which has gone crazy, right? 90% is with maybe 3 or 4 partners. Our experience was that within October GFF, when the product was launched, we've already come down to about a 70 crore credit being offered in the month of Jan. 15 lakh transactions with about 1,000 rupee average ticket size. And this rolling, right? I mean, already BNPL had done well, but it came out, and then we had credit line on UPI, very similar, within 45 days. And I'm assuming most of us are aware of the credit line on UPI as a product. If not, I mean, just at a touch point, you can actually have a credit, you have history with the bank or with the TPAP. They're ready to then give you a certain amount of leverage. So these are small ticket items. 12,000 to 50,000 is what we've seen as a number being given as credit. 45 days cycle, people are giving it back. The visibility in terms of both the banks having a visibility that there are, for example, Paytm has 12 crore merchants. And even if there are 50% transacting merchants and they have an option of taking a 15,000 rupee loan, because these are all MSMEs, you're touching at the heart of a place where you really need credit for an ongoing basis. And we've kind of seen that the NPAs are really low, the age on the network is known. Already there are about 5 or 7 other networks which have approached us to go live on the same model. I know that this product has been launched 2 years back, but it's kind of picked up, and now with partners like Paytm who have a significant role in the market, they know their touch points, they know a lot about like KYC, otherwise also from a merchant perspective, and they've started giving out AI-enabled platforms to their merchants so that they can actually understand their own flows, look at the transactions, and then take the offers that are available to them. So I think that's how I see it from a distribution, credit, basis, the products that will help evolve this to the next level. And then everybody's making money, right? For the first time, the banks are not unhappy. There's a float balance, which is huge. There is the 1.1% being distributed within the ecosystem, within a TSP to the bank and the Paytm side as well. So that's what it looks like.
Wonderful. So talking about such complex implementations perspective, Lalit, would like to know from your experiences how at the scale this happens, right? And what are the typical challenges you have gone through and you have resolved that and able to build such successful volume?
Yeah, sure. Just would like to touch upon 2 points which Satyajit raised. I think it's important because the point that he made about credit being available 2 years back, I think NPCI at that point in time opened some 25 credit lines, different products that were enabled. But the momentum and traction comes more from a perspective of how innovation journey that is carried out by the players like him who bring about innovation, whereas banks may have an option, but banks are typically slow on their side to implement it across. So I think he rightly pointed out that point which is there. And we have also been effectively working on that space with the recent, you must be knowing the acquisition of PayU. So we are actively working on that credit line as well. Coming back to your own point, which is related to the complexities. I think MindGate started out in 2009 and 2014 was the first time that we got a chance to participate in UPI. We were among the top 2 vendors who were selected by an RBI hackathon and we participated, and RS Software went to and implemented the backend, and we were the lucky ones who got the chance to participate with the banks. So major of the banks in the ecosystem went onto our rails. At that point in time, we were a small player, but our ambitions were big, and we kind of used that opportunity and we could really see the growth happening. So at that strategic point, we made very conscious decisions. How do we scale this up? We were not kind of happy in terms of, going in an old stack. How do we kind of innovate and bring about this journey? Because the moment it went live with a few banks, we realized that this is not like, normal growth that is. It was really, it was exploding. So we kind of made the right decisions. And very consciously when we started off, we introduced a lot of innovation in terms of, how we handle transactions. We were the first ones who kind of made the journeys very independent of each other. We kind of made that PSP should not impact the issuer, acquiring should not impact the issuer. So we kind of had 3 different switches right from the very beginning. We were the kind of ones who were pioneering with NPCI to ensure our high volume customers who are there, they should not have that particular challenges which are there. So innovating on that helped us because that helped us scale. And the complexities typically come from 24/7 implementation. So TD is a measurement which you must be knowing from a METI perspective. So while the industry standard says 1%, we internally have a tolerance level of not more than 0.02%. So that is when we look at it in terms of measurement. So what is requires us for to take that? So if you look at whatever implementations we do across, if our average TDs you have to compare are somewhere around 0.2 max, and with the biggest of the banks it is less than 0.022%. So these journeys and complexities come from a perspective of implementation, day-to-day monitoring, kind of having a deeper penetration in terms of visibility across which is there, and kind of effectively working on those RCS. The complexities are more from a perspective of bank infrastructure integration with their backend systems. And secondly, from a TPAP perspective, what typically happens, the complexity comes from different TPAPs bring in their own kind of, I would say, API stack for us to integrate. So we have tried to keep it uniform across banks as much as participate with GPay, participate with WhatsApp, what standardizations can we bring about, because that helps us in the overall journey how we are integrating. So these have been real challenges and complexities where we have worked effectively and collaborated with all the partners involved. And I think one of the important things is also that OEMs have also helped us in understanding and kind of keeping us in forefront of technology. So we have leveraged those also very well, and our new latest stack, which is 6.0, where we have been able to achieve transaction average journey is somewhere around 200 to 250 milliseconds. So that is the kind of improvement where earlier it used to take around 800 to 900. We had a 300% improvement with that. So these typically have helped us, and I think right investments have made us help implement these complex journeys across different banks.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Vijayendra, I mean, earlier of the session, there was one discussion about the trust, right? And banking works on the trust, right? And it's very much important to build the controls around it so that what are innovations are going to happen and what are the new offerings are coming, the trust should not go, the control should be there. So, from your perspective, how do you see it, and would like to know your views about it?
Yeah, I think the speed is given on UPI, right? That's as you said. I think it's given. The controls probably are not something which comes with this responsibility. So looking from that angle, I see we have to move from transaction-based or financial control to a life cycle-based approach, which probably is the case for any evolved financial product. And when I say that from moving from transaction or payment-based control to a life cycle-based control, we are talking about typically, at a first level, who owns what. That has to be very clear, because in this ecosystem there are multiple players. You have banks, you have TPAPs, you have NPCI, and then of course you have players like MindGate who provide the core infrastructure and application. So, but when it comes to credit, the ownership of the credit is obviously with the bank or the underwriter. I think that part is clear. From where the inflow is coming, whether it is coming from a TPAP or from a model, doesn't make a difference. So that clarity is a must. Now, moving to the governance part, the governance, as I said, it has to be, since UPI is real time, right? The way today we see UPI, and if I am not mistaken, January was what, I think it was 21.8 billion transaction. Yeah, 21.7 billion transaction, and 24 trillion is the value. That's the kind of number and value we are talking about. That's the kind of data which is coming into the system. So obviously, when we are talking about real-time payment, the real-time governance also has to come into picture, which as of now is not the case, because most of the governance today, the monitoring today is still happening not at the real time, and that is where the innovation has to come, when it actually, in terms of real-time monitoring, real-time velocity checks, real-time fault checks, those things are still happening post-facto, or they're more of from a value perspective rather than the behavior perspective. So we have to move from a value-based monitoring to a behavior-based, pattern-based monitoring. That's very, very important when it comes to putting governance in the place. Yeah,
right. Yeah, Satyajit, just coming back to you from the perspective, when we say, using up the data, Vijayendra also touched upon this point, said behavioral patterns will come from the data, right? How this data is used to build the intelligence layer on top of the transaction data which is available, right? So, typically what data you can use, what you can't use, for what purpose is a different question altogether. Right. But how this layer is built?
So maybe I'll take a step back. I did mention about the API banking as a platform that we've built. It's called Transact. Actually, one of my colleagues was here on the earlier session, and he did speak a lot about Transact. If the guests are the same, I don't want to repeat it for them. But Transact is a API banking pre-integrated platform which has SDKs, APIs. We're trying to build as much intelligence in that as possible, like what you mentioned correctly. The data is of the bank. Every layer that we build is to try and help the bank or help the fintech, whoever is the owner of the data, to get more interesting analysis or information about it. Again, on the panel, I think we've spoken about the speed. The challenges of speed and trying to keep it frictionless is something which you need to make sure that you process enough, you process fast enough without like any technical declines, and make sure that you give value to your customers. I'm going to maybe go back to a little bit of a credit line on UPI experience, and this is very fresh for us and something which has been used and leveraged very well. You know, the way the transactions are happening in the country has changed dramatically. You had payment aggregators which had come in because there was e-commerce, there was card-based payments, and majority of those, let's say 30 lakh cards which were there active a few years back, with multiple people having, I mean, one person having multiple cards, so maybe unique numbers could have been X. And those are the transactions that were happening, right, from a payment aggregator perspective. On merchant side also, you had a POS or cash, whichever was available. This is just 10 years back. We're not even going too back in history. Now what you've seen is payment aggregators, from what I have understood, is about 60 to 80% transactions are on UPI. Merchant transactions are on QR. Everywhere else, wherever you look at a payment being initiated, there's a greater chance of UPI being used over other channels, and maybe IMPS for payouts, etc. But it's a digital channel of transacting. The ideal mode scenario, like what you mentioned about intelligence being built, what we've seen is, and this is in the partnership, let's say with the Paytm side, that they have 12 crore merchants, they have these touch points. The KYC is with the Paytm. They've onboarded the merchant. They have certain data given back to the banks. The credit line is being issued to those merchants. The transactions are happening. End customer, the number, the frequency, value, volume, number of times, what type of transactions, when are they being made, are all there for them to see. And this is with the bank as well as with Paytm. So the kind of transaction or the kind of credit that is being requested, some are paying back in 30 days, some are paying in 45 days, in time, not in time. What are the kind of need that is there for that kind of a merchant, right? Is being analyzed on a daily basis. It was impossible to do so before. From a payment aggregator was a separate system. Cards was a separate system. Banks didn't have access to that information as much, right? Today, it's readily available. Our systems as Transact, we're giving out every single detail out, like categorizing it and giving it back to the banks. So also with Paytm, sort, and I'm using Paytm as an example of what data can be used, right? The entire pattern, the kind of growth, it's in the second month we saw 300% growth in uptake. Then it's been a little subsided to 150, but it's still at 50% growth. And this can only be possible if you've analyzed your data, you've figured out what is the need of the market, how do you actually have to associate with your customer and then the end customer, so that you have the availability of those funds to deploy and then therefore utilize. And this, I think we are trying to use it across. This is just one example of, let's say, credit line on UPI, which is fresh, which is done well, growing at a certain pace, multiple places. But the same goes for fraud. It goes, you have velocity checks. You have, like what I think Vijayendra mentioned, that it's one of the biggest areas where you need to be proactive, not reactive. It's some VPAs are known, certain lists are known, some activities are known, and you see it. So the faster you give this information back to the banks, the easier it becomes for the banks to take a decision, and this, I'm sure the regulatory side, compliance side is taken care of that way. I think the layers are not necessarily AI only built, it's actually data being crunched and given back to take decisions on business first. So that's what it is.
Yeah, sure. Sure. Lalit, coming back to you, I mean, from the perspective of new innovations, what Satyajit was talking about, one of them was UPI Lite as well. I mean, the way it was evolved into the market, it was being adopted just as, I mean, you don't have to promote it much, right? When you use it daily basis, you will definitely adopt it. So how does that work, and what are the challenges that typically comes when it comes to the larger scale perspective for new products, new innovations?
Yeah. So I think UPI Lite as a product is almost close to around now 3.5 years old. I would say initially when it was launched, it failed to get much traction. It's gained traction only when it's got promoted through PSPs. So the primary problem statement was today, all these low value transactions are also going to your core bank. So how is it that we can kind of bring an ecosystem wherein you avoid those transactions and those journeys can be easily adopted and you have a faster payment for the customer for those low values. So initially when the product was launched from that perspective only we adopted banking were already aware about a concept called VAM, which is virtual account management. So we kind of leveraged that as a solution that we already had with our corporate banking platform which was there. So we have kind of leveraged it across all our banks. So typically what happens is we take the balance from your CASA account into our VAM and we kind of operate it through that. And from a PSP perspective, the balance which is loaded onto your wallet, which is maintained at NPCI. So there's a sync API which kind of syncs between NPCI and the balance which is available on your mobile. So from a banking perspective, what we need to take care is we need to kind of reconcile those end of the day balances with our VAM accounts and kind of give the assurance to the bank that the balances which are there, because ultimately custodian still happens to be the bank. It's not the NPCI, so risk is managed ultimately by the bank. So from that perspective, I think we have been able to successfully do that. And also we have worked very effectively with the NPCI to kind of tie the piece of recon, because it's slightly different from your normal three-way reconciliation which happens, because light balances are in point in time. You'll never know what balance you tally and what is actual balances. So that kind of nuances we have taken care. So light as a product, the fundamental principle behind is ease of use, correct? And that's what is there. And with RBI also seeing the traction, now it's increased the limits also. So we have also, as a matter of principle and design, we always kept that as a configurable value, because we always knew that these limits will keep on increasing. So I think more PSPs promoting it and cashback, how effective it is. So I mean ecosystems have leveraged it, and the more success PSPs see it, because today, all said and done, out of 653 banks, still you have only 57 banks live on UPI Lite. The more the banks are, the more success it is. And I think as UPI has become as a core infrastructure, as rightly pointed out, so I think it makes much more sense for banks also to kind of take these low values away, because ultimately it uses their infrastructure. The less pressure it comes on it. So banks also want to promote effectively. I can see with a lot of banks who are doing transformation on their mobile banking journey, they are also very actively promoting Lite transactions. So I see a lot of future for Lite, which is going forward. I think right now credit is not part of it. Savings is, I think it's matter of time before credit also becomes part of it at one way or the other point in time. But yeah, definitely Lite is one important product which we've been involved right from its inception and innovation on those lines.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure. Vijayendra, when it comes to scale perspective or variations of transaction perspective, a lot of things have happening on the fraud and risk management side as well, right? Because there are plenty of ways people innovate on the other side also, which you may not be ready for. So from the bank perspective or from the financial institution perspective, how do you see that controls are being placed into?
Can I, before that, can I ask one or two questions with my co-panelists? I just wanted to, so somebody spoke about UPI being, taking over the payment rails. So let's say today, if we increase the UPI limit from whatever, 1 lakh, 2 lakhs for P2M, and increase it to, let's say, 10 lakhs or 5 lakhs, what will happen? Do you see IMPS, RTGS, NEFT dying its own death, and UPI completely taking all these payment rails or payment instrument? Or do you still see, or maybe you see them as a second option just for the sake of resilience?
So can I take this?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. So I see it in two parts actually. If you look at it the way currently it is working, there are certain MCCs which are allowed to go up to 5 lakhs. If you look at it from an NPCI perspective or from a user perspective, user always wants to have one go-to platform. While from a regulator perspective, you see they don't want to have a single point of failure. So I mean, they always want to have multiple options available. So IMPS is there, RTG is not done away with. So that will continue to happen. But what's important is the moment you open up, user behavior will dictate what will succeed. Today, the whole USP behind UPI when we launched was, I mean, you have your purse, correct? The amount of time it takes out to take cash from you and make a payment, you should be faster than that, simple. Next philosophy behind it was whatever is in their wallet should come in UPI. So even your card is there. So there should be nothing which is there. So obviously credit also has to go
I
right.
see you are wearing Meta glasses. Do you see UPI payment happening through Meta glasses?
Yeah, so we already did the POC in GFF. We integrated with Lenskart and did the IoT payments.
Okay, wonderful.
So I think good thing about CSB this time was that last 2 years we have seen CSB being very active. Last year was very active, but before that also they were active. So I've seen a lot of changes.
You'll
Before
see us more
that,
active
it was
in next
not
couple
there
of years.
actually.
Yes. But
So
coming
good
to what
to know that.
coming to what you asked about so the fraud part, I touched upon in the previous question also. So moving from purely from a payment based, to a behavioral pattern, right? That's very, very important for us. But I just wanted to touch upon a couple of more things. So one is the monitoring aspect. The monitoring aspect is still not real time. And of course, with players like MindGate and other infrastructure provider, I think we'll soon move to a real-time monitoring base, which will give a lot of breather to banks like us, where of course we are kind of still wary of processing such large number of transactions, especially with some MCC now being opened up to 5 lakhs, right? So that's number one. Then utilizing basically the micro signals rather than still working on the macro signals. So because UPI is all about micro, right? Going micro as detailed as possible. And we are still not utilizing those micro signals in terms of your devices, timing of the payment, amount of the payment, frequency of the payment, what is the chargeback. Those data we are still not built into the fraud models. Those are supposed to still happen. So I think that will give us larger insight in terms of building these fraud models when it comes to UPI transaction and controlling those fraud. And most of these fraud, as you know, happen primarily due to social engineering rather than failure at the checkout point, right? So that aspect, that at least from our bank's perspective, we are trying to educate our customers as much as possible. And that education is happening at every single point of control, where you're logging at the time of checkout, of course. So, but that responsibility is with the whole ecosystem. So that's clearly, a work cut out for every system, every ecosystem player in this industry. But I see, I think system, as you know, fraudsters are always one step ahead of us. But here, luckily, on the UPI side, I see we are kind of working, in parallel. And I think we'll soon take over that also, hopefully, with the right approach, right?
I just want to add 2 points to what he said. Just from a fraud perspective, I think a lot of real-time work that we are doing right now. I think we have an AI pack already available where we are doing kind of real-time checks as well. But just to add another point to the social engineering part, I think we are doing a lot of work with the regulator as well as the NPCI to do away with SMS. So we are in talks with telco also. I think I see that in next 1 year that should be one, because SMS is our Achilles heel in UPI.
So RBI has already sent us a notice. That notice is already, directive is already with us. We have to go live and give this option, although it's not mandatory. But 1st of April 2026, we have to give another option to every customer for all kind of, so DPSC, they have very clearly said, you provide alternate option to SMS. So TOTP or device based or card based, whatever we have to. So every bank I think is looking for.
Yeah, but that's an alternate. What I'm saying is the SMS flow itself. So what typically happens is so they have an SMS URL. So actually it's not a physical SMS. So we kind of verify with the regulator in terms of URL. It happens everything in the back end. From a customer perspective, no SMS goes out because typically all SMS frauds keep on happening. So, I mean, Vodafone is the one which is not yet there, but for other 2 telcos we have already done. Airtel is already there on that. I think it's a matter of time. So, I think
so that's an interesting one. So, then I just wanted to ask, so will that remove the device risk altogether?
Yeah, that's what we are
saying.
saying.
So, if my device is compromised for whatever reason, I have no, risk in terms of my OTPs or SMS being auto-forwarded or being seen by a person.
Correct.
Right?
And the current, yes, you are right. And also we are relying on SMS to verify the mobile number. That whole process will be done away with. So I think that's we are working on. And I'm sure with that, a lot of frauds on social engineering side will be taken care of. I think that's the key focus this year on for that.
Any thoughts from your side?
From a channel agnostic, I mean, what I thought about was, UPI, if you make it 10 lakhs, still NEFT, RTGS is through your corporate internet banking channels, internet banking, mobile banking, etc. Right? So I don't see that being changed. So it'll coexist, and it might have to be brought out as an API, for example. Right now, nobody's using it as a mobile first solution. So yeah, should stay.
Yeah, just to add to your point, I think this year in GFF, I don't know whether you paid attention, there was a B2B switch that you are enabling.
Yeah.
I think one dimension which you rightly pointed out from a Paytm perspective, where the merchant dimension comes in, you are focusing more on collections and what kind of credit products can come on it. But with the B2B rails opening up, and we have made 3 banks live on that, the kind of potential that we see is immense. What would happen is, today you have authorization happening on a different switch, which is the B2B switch for us. Right. And we kind of know all the spend patterns from that perspective. I think that brings a different dimension altogether to offer SME loans on those perspective which is there. So we are effectively working on that as well. I think that's going to be a great credit enabler across for the ecosystem. And that's where your RTGS and the payment limits need to go higher, because today, if you're looking at corporate payments, they are not going to be 1 lakh, 2 lakh. I mean, we are talking about payments in 15, 20 lakhs, and if authorization metrics is done. So the beautiful part of our integration is we have made payments independent of authorization. So depending upon authorization on that rail can be of 1 crore also. But if the authorization is done for 1 crore, our switch ensures that that payment is made via RTGS. Right. So that enables us for the credit to be enabled for the corporate. No, so that's also one effective area on innovation that we're working on.
That's quite interesting, yeah.
Sure.
So a lot of interesting discussion and thank you everyone for being with us. We can pick up 1 or 2 questions max from the audience. Any questions? Yeah.
UPI is so popular, people know everything. I don't see. I mean, everybody is so ingrained.
Hi. So I have a question on the success and failure rates. So what we have seen in the weekends, the UPI success rate is very low. So like, are there any efforts being made to up the ante? So
I think Lalit will take this question, but I'll just add to. In fact, I want my part also to be added in that question. So, because I am not a technology expert on the rails, but his question is valid. I do see that problem very often. It may be a bank-specific problem, or it may be a ecosystem level problem, or it may be purely a PSP level problem. But what's your take on this? Where is the bottleneck today?
So, I mean, if we have kind of data points to support that, because we look at the patterns which are there, the banks that we have managed at our end, we don't see any such pattern, because we have seen a spike of payments on weekends, in fact. We've seen, like, earlier this didn't used to be, because earlier the peak used to happen between morning 9 to 11 and the maximum peak, which is from 5:30 to 7:30. That's the max time. I mean, you have the maximum peaks. But over a period of time now, the way the UPI rail is operating, we are seeing a lot of weekend payments also spike. So that's not a pattern usually supported, because if you look at regulator is kindly giving a very close watch. So if you have such anomalies happening, regulator is, I am sure all banks knowing, they will get a letter very next day, and they are supposed to get back to in terms of improvement. So I kind of feel that it could be very specific to bank, but if you look at the major banks or the major players, I don't see that they have any particular issue on the payment side of it.
I think same, absolutely. We've not seen such patterns come up, but could be exclusively to certain banks.
So I'm actually referring to what we see on the apps. So wherein we are seeing that this app is experiencing like low success rate.
No, so it must be related to your bank account. See, the way UPI works is, while you may be using a GPay, and if you happen to have one of the banks and that bank is having an issue, then it will say that not allowed because your bank is experiencing a low rate. But that doesn't mean the app is down.
Okay, I have another question if the time permits.
Yeah.
So maybe we can pick up later if somebody else has a question. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, please.
Hi. My question is, will the UPI going ahead in terms of payments, what do you think is the role of cards, and especially credit cards, going forward in a 1 to 2 year time horizon? Where do you think we are going to land with cards?
Cards will always play a great role because today, if you look at the economy from a perspective of debit card, is as what it is, what you see. The growth will happen only on the credit side of it. And as Indian economy grows, I mean, bank also want to promote the credit side of it. So I see the market for it growing. But only problem right now is we have only one single player, which is RuPay. That's where the constraint is. And RuPay is more, I would say, constructed for low value. If you look at it, if you yourself are using, if you do high value, you'll use Visa or Master, you'll not use a RuPay. So that's something to work with the regulator and operators. And the other part is innovators like Mobileware and all, they are also working very effectively to enable on that. I think you can add to that.
I think just the statistics show otherwise. I mean, the growth has been there in cards as well. The growth on UPI has been dramatic, and that's something which is opened up a new area. For example, you had cash, and you could compare it with UPI, like what we spoke, right? That there's a wallet kind of a scenario that you're just not carrying cash, you're carrying your own mobile, and you're trying to make those payments. But there are card payments which are doing in general, in restaurants. It's a high value ticket, you're doing it, and the numbers have increased. So if you look at a number which is there at maybe a 28, 29 lakh, and today's number of credit cards that have been issued, it's far larger. So there's been growth, there's been enough growth for them.
I see number of use cases on the card side increasing, especially B2B payments, commercial payments on the same rail. As of now, it is not there. But in next couple of years, these new products coming in, and plus the majority of the growth, even if you see on the right, UPI rails on the card side is NTC, new to credit. And that will continue to grow because there is a huge amount of requirement there. So, and that's why this is directly linked to the growth story of the country, right? With MSME and SME linked. Only thing is that bank has to be part of that ecosystem. We need to be not only innovative around that, but obviously create certain use cases primarily on the micro and MSME ecosystem, where this can actually take off in a big way. Because individual payment, I think we are reaching a stage where I believe every smartphone user is already an active user. But on the SME side or business side, I think that next set of growth will happen from there. That's my belief.
Hello, Vikrant.
Sure. Yeah.
Is there a chance for one more to slip in?
Yeah, maybe, but the last one, yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much. So this is a first-hand experience about chargeback, what we call in credit card credit card systems. And I've seen myself, a rickshaw driver and a grocery store guy, he's accepting a payment, and then while I'm there with him, right, the transaction has been reversed or cancelled. And I was actually taken aback in the sense that I could also not offer any resolution being from the technology side and in this business, that what is the workflow to counter that, right? I mean, and then that is the question of trust in the system.
Yeah.
So immediate reaction was that I'm not going to accept UPI payments henceforth, like for small ticket items like 50 and 100. So is there a system already in place, or how simple or fast is it for the merchant?
Oh, do you want me to take it? Yeah. So, I mean, while there could be aberrations, but typically it's a problem of the onboarding. So typically what happens is when UPI rails got launched, and when, see, you already have merchants already onboarded on UPI side, and credit card rail came later, it's already using the existing UPI rail. So typically what happens is when a merchant is enabled for credit card usage, that control is something that has to be controlled at a bank acquiring level. So for a rickshaw driver who typically happens to be onboarded on a Paytm stack, correct? And Paytm is a merchant stack which is there. He would have given him a Paytm QR, and he has enabled by default for a merchant payment. So then typically these journeys will have a resistance wherein whether it is to be allowed or not. So this is typically an onboarding problem, not a UPI problem per se, but those QRs which is, so if I see all the banks which kind of onboard now, they have a very granular control, because you don't want to have customer complaints on that part. If a chargeback is going to be raised, and if a merchant says, well, I was supposed to receive 10 rupees, but I'm getting only 8.75, then that's one problem more for a bank to solve. So that's more of an onboarding problem rather than being this problem. But while, yes, from a typical user perspective, he will not be able to resolve. But I think this also calls from a governance and NPCI regulator, banks all are working on that.
Yeah, possibly the user, the person making the payment, there could be some kind of scoring from him for him or her also, if that is in place, like number of disputes that are being raised, maybe something like that. Because this is something I saw it personally, and it's a valid question, especially if you want to propagate the usage to more and more retail payments, right? And in fact, we are talking reverse now. We are saying it's no more going to be a micro payment. The limit can go well above 2 lakh or even touch 5 or 10 lakhs in near future.
Okay, while I can answer that, so what you are saying is you don't want the friction in the payment for low value for a rickshaw driver when you use a credit card.
Yes,
correct?
yes.
That is the understanding.
Be that any amount actually. Yeah. Because the risk of chargeback it's there. I mean, how do the person moves away from the counter, how am I going to recover my money?
No,
right?
so typically, if you see the experience in UPI, by default, credit card as an option will not come if an acquiring side, the opposite party is not eligible for credit card. It will directly go to debit card, so friction will not come. That auto intelligence is built into the app. While this problem seems to be there for certain onboarded earlier merchants who would have got an older QR where by default they have enabled all payment channels. You also have a system called as a complaint that you can make. So what typically happens is if you do that and you have UDR which automatically resolves the complaints also. What happens, this becomes as a part of complaints which comes into overall ecosystem, and when NPS also looks at it, I think while solutions are already in principle, people are reprimanding, but I would say some aberrations will be there. I mean, no system is perfect, but this is something that has been looked into, and there are effective steps and governance in place to address that problem.
Thanks, Lalit.
Sure. Thank you for
Thank you.
your insights and being patient for that. Thank you.
Thank you to Mr. Satyajit Kanekar, Mr. Lalit Chowdhary, and Mr. Vijayendra Sharma for sharing your valuable perspectives. And thank you, Mr. Vikrant Kulkarni, for moderating the session.